That's a good Blue Chew ad, by the way. Turns flesh into metal and metal into flesh.
Welcome back to the internet's #1 fake history podcast, The Lore Boys. I'm your host, Ethan Palmer. With me is James.
Hey, it's me, James Miller.
And Peter.
Hi, I'm a little sleepy.
Jim Peter. This week we're going to be talking about Magic the Gathering's New Phyrexia and the explicitly named New Phyrexian Invasion of the Multiverse. This is going to be, I guess, a primer for that story arc, or the current Magic the Gathering story arc. This is about as current as Magic the Gathering story gets. The largest chunk of lore for this episode, or one of the biggest chunks of lore for this episode, is the Planeswalker's Guide to Phyrexia, All Will Be One by Grace Fong, which came out last month. Essentially came out in January. So
Okay.
we're pretty current. This episode was requested by plenty of people. A lot of people have been asking on the Lore Boys Discord server for more Magic the Gathering lore, but specifically New Phyrexia was requested by Darkside Bunny, Honest Don, Eric with a K, and Lorebonian Wizard. I'll never get over how great a name Lorebonian Wizard is.
That was one of our jokes, I think, right? And then after we'd said the joke, she posted it.
So it used to be Lizard Wizard, yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So
we remember all of our favorite people's character arcs, right?
Exactly. So thanks for requesting the episode, everybody. I always have a good time with Magic the Gathering, so request it as much as you want, and I'll definitely come back to it at some point. If you want to request an episode or a topic, there is a link to our Discord in the episode description that you can join, and we have a channel for requesting different things. Jamie, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah, I was stuck downtown Montreal a couple weeks ago, and I was walking around. It's snowing. It's cold. I stepped in a puddle, so my foot was wet, and I had 2 hours to kill, and I was just looking for a place to be. And I found a card shop, and I went in, and they were having Friday Night Magic, and it was wonderful. I felt so at home. I was just there watching people play cards, and I was like, I found my little nerd cave that I can wait out the storm, and it was wonderful.
That's awesome. Yeah, if you've never played Magic and you only heard our episodes, Friday Night Magic's FNMs are a great way to get intro to the hobby. There will be people there who are willing to show you for sure, teach you how to play, all that stuff. Like, that's kind of what Friday Night Magics are for. And there will be people who are classic basement dwelling neckbeards who will maybe be unreasonable with you, but just ignore them as best you can.
Yeah. I was pretty nice. I was pretty nice with everyone. I don't know what you're talking about.
Jamie, you were just telling us in the bonus content how you spent 45 minutes shaving your neck beard, so I don't think that applies to you.
I work very hard to at least not have the neck beard. Yeah.
Porcelain on camera. I think you did a good job. Oh yeah, look at that. Get a little peck in there. Yeah. A buddy of mine who hates his bank account, I think more than anything, if his spending habits are to be believed, just started getting into the Warhammer 40K Magic sets. So obviously, he wants to combine his two most worthless and expensive hobbies to just spend his money twice as fast.
I mean, Magic has more resale value typically than Warhammer, I'll say.
Yeah.
You can buy cards, you can buy packs, and you'll get rares, which are worth 5 cents whenever you buy them or whatever, and then 2 years later they might jump in price to be $20 or whatever, right? Yeah. So if you it's a lot of work, and it is a hobby in a very traditional sense. It's a collecting hobby, like stamp collecting or coin collecting or whatever, where you do have to kind of be in touch with the prices and stuff. But there's apps for smartphones that you can just you hold the card in front of your camera and it'll just tell you how much it's worth, and then cool. We'll have access to a marketplace and stuff that you can connect with other people on, and
collecting is a lot of fun. Especially when I went through my process of collecting my replacement Transformers after the house fire. I finished my collection a month ago, and it sucks actually, because the hunt is fun. Tracking it down for a good price is fun, and now I'm all right. Well,
I hate that shit. I hate collecting. Like, I just want to play the game Magic the Gathering. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess.
For Pete, it's not so bad because like the total was 8. Like you just only had to find 8 things or whatever, right? Like 10 instead of
hundreds.
When it comes to Magic,
thousands. So I want to give a shout out to new patrons, new pledges this week. 4 great names: Trevor, Colton, Miles, and Kenneth, for their support and keeping the lights on. Thanks so much,
Thank you,
folks. I will say this was a weird one to get Colton and Miles at the same time, just because I know
Hudson friends.
Yeah, I know a Colton and a Miles who came to Jamie and Mai's high school in like the last year of high school, essentially. And they were just like best friends. So like the only Colton and the only Miles I know happen to be very close friends. Then we got a Colton and a Miles both pledging support on the Patreon at the same time. So I guess Colton and Miles, you guys should reach out to each other on Patreon. I don't know if that's possible. And be friends. That's, I guess, what I'm saying. So we can only assume you'll like each other. Okay, so let's jump into it because we got some ground to cover here. Where we last left our Magic storyline. Actually, you guys, I didn't have it in here that I would let you guys stumble around, but you guys want to take a crack at the Phyrexian invasion? What we know about it so far, we kind of talked about it a little bit before the episode, so you have some freebies in there.
Pete has his hand up.
No, I don't.
Pete, go ahead.
If I recall, they're a hyper focused, kind of scientific, consuming machine society, the Phyrexians, and they are burrowing through forcing their way through the different planes of reality, because normally only a planeswalker can do that, but they have forced their way through the different planes of reality to conquer and absorb the people in these different realms, if I'm correct. So, and they we talked about the Neon Dynasty, the big bad, or one of them was just a Phyrexian who had forced his way through into cyberpunk Japan and was trying to use the technology that they use to drain the life out of spirits, basically, as some way to create force a planeswalker spark, which is of course your wizard puberty, when you can, you get bullied enough to travel through time, basically, right?
Yeah, exactly.
If you bust enough ghosts, you can use all that power to go to the next plane, I guess.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, so
was I close?
Mostly pretty good there. So we in our last Magic storyline arc that we covered, we were on the plane of Kamigawa.
Yeah.
There was Kaito Shizuki, who had driven out the Phyrexian Praetor Jin Gataxius, the blue-aligned Praetor.
Right.
But not before the Core Augur.
Guy.
Sorry?
What about the purple guy? Where was he in that?
Tezzeret we'll talk about in a sec. Okay. So Tezzeret was the one who... So, Peter, you were right that Phyrexians aren't able to planeswalk. You before Jin Gataxius does what I was just about to say, which is he absconded with Tamiyo and successfully compleated, which is when they turn them into Phyrexians. So they compleated the first planeswalker when...
She was the rabbit girl, right?
Exactly, the Moonfolk rabbit girl.
Yeah.
And they turned her into a Phyrexian, which is the first time that had ever happened. And he did that with the power of the reality chip that afforded him.
Right.
So where Tezzeret comes into it is Phyrexians could not planeswalk. So how did they get to Kamigawa in the first place, right? In the past, different planes had been infected by this stuff called glistening oil or Phyrexian oil.
It's that mercury shit, right? It's a thick fluid, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
What's in the water in Ohio this week.
Yeah, exactly. Stay safe, Coffee. And any other Ohioans. So
the fucking whatever the transport minister is just no, we're just gonna blow up that train full of alien fluid downtown. Don't worry about it. You guys can go home.
Yeah, exactly. We're just gonna. Don't worry, we've got the Phyrexians contained in your town. You guys are good.
Just drink bottled water. It's fine. You won't turn into a machine monster.
Yeah. Wait a minute. Let's see who's wearing this mask. Rips off the head of the safety minister or whatever, and it's the CEO of Nestle. Just drink bottled water.
Water's not a human right, baby.
Okay, so Jin Gataxius, with the help of the reality chip, completes Tamiyo, but how did he get there in the first place? So Tezzeret, this other planeswalker whom we did a whole episode on, has something in his chest called the Planar Bridge, which allows him to transport inorganic material across planes, not organic material. Now, Phyrexians are mechanical, but they are a a blending of machine and flesh. So they're not purely inorganic and they're not purely organic.
Okay.
They kind of straddle the line where there's something called the mycosynth, which exists on Mirrodin, which I'll give you guys a refresher on Mirrodin in a little bit. But this stuff essentially has the ability to turn flesh to metal and metal to flesh, back and forth. And it kind of just like, so these things are all the Phyrexians are kind of combinations of both. So when Jin Gitaxias arrived on Kamigawa, he was like in a very weakened state, which is why he didn't fight Kaito the first time, was because he just arrived and like all his meat parts had been like disintegrated essentially. And he just had to like recover for a while.
That's a good Blue Chew ad, by the way. Turns flesh into metal and metal into flesh.
French ad is Blue Chew.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, Jin Gitaxias would be the Blue Chew aligned Praetor, right? He's like going through time to fix the Phyrexian boners.
We'll travel the multiverse to fix our ED problems.
I mean, knowing like pharmaceutical science, they would, right? Like, think of all the science wasted on boners, and where they could have done something else.
Yeah, if your metal doesn't turn back to flesh in 8 hours, contact a doctor.
You talking about all this, I was just like, just thinking back, it's one of the few arcs that we've got. Of course, it's like a 15-week process because the three of us rotate. And I was like, God damn, dude, Neon Dynasty was tight. Shit, like so good.
Yeah, I mean, I have had a lot more enjoyment in my episodes recently by going to source material rather than the wiki, like using the wiki to access the source material. And the Kamigawa one's a prime example where it was just like, it's a 5-part story that I told over 4 episodes with a Tezzeret episode kind of injected in there, right? Mm-hmm. And it's doable because we've talked about it before, but in the past, Magic or Wizards of the Coast would release like full books and full stories with each set, and then they stopped doing it for like a good while in like the mid-aughts to the mid-2010s, and now they've kind of restarted telling full stories again, so it's kind of cool that we've kind of got it back. So yeah, that's like, you don't have to remember too much about the Kamigawa episode. We're gonna actually jump before that and talk about why Jin Gitaxias ends up getting sent to Kamigawa. We're talking about New Phyrexia. Like I said earlier, we have done an episode on New Phyrexia before, but all the info for that episode basically comes from 2011, whereas now it's modernized and it's the new storyline is back on New Phyrexia. So we're kind of talking about the changes that have been made there.
Was that kind of like Quest for Karn stuff that we went through, where he was at the center of like the flesh planet? Where
exactly So that was Mirrodin. That was his artificially created planet.
Right,
which he turned into, or which got turned into New Phyrexia. I'll give you guys when we get there, I'll give you guys a refresher on what exactly happened there.
Okay.
To start, I have a quote here from the Planeswalker's Guide to Phyrexia, All Will Be One by Grace Fong. Exult in the glory of Phyrexia, all will be one. Welcome to a plane ruled by the oldest and most terrifying creatures in the multiverse as we prepare to spread our viral gift to every plane. We are a society of biomechanical creatures who want to achieve an artificial, inorganic vision of perfection. Our parasitic civilization invades and consumes all planes it encounters, expanding its ranks by converting other beings into biomechanical creatures. Our infection, Phyrexia, is a divine gift. Those who oppose us are misguided or evil and must be shown the error of their ways.
Wild way to like market your machine planet. Our parasitic infection is divine. Any who oppose us are evil. Like, okay, that's crazy.
I mean, it's easy to back yourself up in any type of war or anything. You know, you could you're justified. That's great.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mission accomplished. Just Phyrexians giving a press conference.
In the last New Phyrexia order, we talked about the factions, which we're going to talk about less on this episode. But I can give you guys refreshers kind of as needed, and I'll have a section where we're basically going to go through the spheres of New Phyrexia, where there's 9 spheres, each kind of aspected to different things. But the white aspected, led by Elesh Norn, is considered the dominant faction of the Phyrexians right now. Elesh Norn is kind of in charge, and the white aspected is kind of they're positioning her as like the big boss, I guess, or the big baddie. And she runs something called the Machine Orthodoxy. So this story and a lot of the stories nowadays are kind of told from her perspective, I guess, which is that divine gift and everything. But the different praetors kind of have different takes on it. I'm going to share a picture with you guys. I was going to share it at the end, because we're going to talk about Elishnorn a little bit later. But here's a picture of Atraxa Grand Unifier.
Holy shit.
And this is kind of the white aspect of, machine orthodoxy kind of vibe, which is like this church of like, we have to spread our divine gift of Phyresis, like becoming a Phyrexian. That's like our holy mission, essentially.
Saucy would love this one. There's a lady with like horns, like 2 sets of horns kind of thing. One that like sit out the side, and then one that like curl towards the face more, like huge wings, spiky thick thighs, and a long tail that kind of splits in the middle, and everybody's reaching up to like put their hands close to her.
Yeah, exactly. They're all kind of like worshiping her as divine, this 4-armed like angel, I guess you could say. For anyone listening at home, I did include sources on all the pictures. So this is Atraxa Grand Unifier by Marta Nail. So that's cool. Nael.
She looks very much like the main villain, or what you think is the main villain, at least in the Guardians of the Galaxy game. The like white on red is a really cool contrast, I find. Yeah. And I drew her before. She's in one of our thumbnails for New Phyrexia.
That is not Elishnorn. That is not the Praetor. That is Atraxa, the Grand Unifier. But just to show you kind of how the machine orthodoxy, their kind of aesthetic is like. This is not all Phyrexians. This is the white aligned Phyrexians.
I remember the white on red, like hammerhead shark kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Plate, basically.
Yeah. That's Elishnorn. So the Phyrexians originated on an old artificially created plane, going way back to our very first Magic the Gathering episodes, when the planeswalker Yawgmoth created them by using a process he called Phyresis to save Thran humans who were infected with fantasy radiation sickness, essentially. If you guys think way back in the caves of Koilos, underneath the Thran Empire, there were these power stones, and there were these Thran humans who were just like sick and couldn't afford treatment, and they went to go live in the caves, and Yawgmoth ends up going to them, treating them with glistening oil, and turning them into Phyrexians on an unnamed plane.
Right.
So I have an excerpt here from the wiki itself. Yawgmoth gave Phyrexian organisms a purpose: to thrive, to grow beyond the confines of Phyrexia and into the rest of the multiverse. Over hundreds of years, Phyrexia evolved priests and acolytes who extolled and worshipped Yawgmoth, as well as demons and abominations of infinite variety to kill for him. Over time, a vast social order emerged, a horrifying food chain with church-like rites and rituals. Phyrexian organisms were judged by their ability to survive their nightmarish world. Successful ones were evolved with an unspeakable mixture of necrotic tissue and greasy metal. Eventually, Phyrexia created spore engines and plague dreadnoughts, unimaginably huge quasi-living artifact machines designed for war.
I love horrifying food chain is a good pairing of words, I think. But it does make me think of just like the Phyrexian food pyramid and what may be at the top.
You're gonna want your fatty human organs, like the livers. You're gonna want those in limited amounts. You want the stringy quadricep muscles. That's good protein. You want that in abundance. Like
yeah.
How many servings of that dark gray fluid, the Phyrexian oil?
Okay, the recommended is 1 glass a day for the antioxidants and glistening oil.
Oh, yeah, all right.
For human thigh meat, it's better to cut against the grain. It's more tender.
Oh god! As a vegetarian, all food chains are kind of horrifying to me these days. So
yeah,
what is this Pokemon you've posted?
So no, like I wanted to find Yawgmoth, but I obviously spelt it wrong by putting not the AWG. I put YOGG moth, and it just gave me Yogg-Saron from WoW as a moth that looks like a Pokemon.
As a moth Pokemon, yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to
the caterpillar form, the metapod form, and then the butterfree form.
It's cute.
What is who is Yawgmoth again?
So Yawgmoth we've talked about at length, and you don't have to focus on him too much. He created the Phyrexians, but in the first ever Magic storylines, he was the first big bad. Was eventually kind of replaced with Nicol Bolas, and now it's now that the Nicol Bolas story has kind of seemingly wrapped a little bit, which again we'll tackle him someday.
I mean, this show is just 6 years of us saying we're going to talk about Nicol Bolas one.
There's too much freaking cool Magic stuff to get to all of it. Honestly, like we need to do like an episode a week or something. I don't know, because we spend too much of our episodes talking about this Yawgmoth cute Pokemon looking thing, which is, hey, it's why the people show up. But you got to admit, it takes time. So Yawgmoth was he was the first big bad. He created the Phyrexians. Eventually, the good guys defeat him. They kill Yawgmoth while on board the Weatherlight. And without their god, the Phyrexians kind of just lose the will to live, and they don't have the capacity to kind of travel between planes at all. So the original plane of Phyrexia these days is nothing but a kind of burnt out ruin. And Yawgmoth is canonically dead, defeated in the canon. So that's like the origins of him. That was before the last new Phyrexia episode we did, which is what happens to them after that. Even
canonically fainted.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Blacked out.
Whited. I think it's whited out these days.
Oh, whited out. Yeah.
So of course, that's not the end of the Phyrexians, as we obviously know. Everyone's favorite arcane golem, Karn, whom you mentioned earlier, Peter, would create the plane of Mirrodin, plane of mathematical perfection out of the existing plane Argentum. He creates it with 5 suns, 1 for each color. And he leaves a jar of Phyrexian oil out for his housekeeper Memmark to find and corrupt himself while Karn is away, essentially. So we did do a whole episode on
I remember that.
On Karn, on the creation of this plane and the corruption of it. I have another quote from Grace Fong for you guys.
Was that part of the Venser thing, or Vesder, whatever that guy's name was?
Venser was involved in the Venser was in the not the Elspeth ones, but the Corona episodes, I think.
That's an insidious way to leave out a thing of that stuff that corrupts you for the housekeeper. It's like $100 bill with anthrax. Here's your tip.
I mean, pretty much what happened. So I have a quote for you guys. Karn created Mirrodin, an independent metallic plane with 5 colored suns and multiple unique cultures. But he accidentally left a drop of glistening oil upon the plane's inner core. The oil slowly corrupted the landscape and wildlife from the inside out. Many Mirrans turned into Phyrexians, including legendary heroes. The divided Mirran culture succumbed to Phyrexia when it reached the outer layer. Under the influence of Mirrodin's 5 colored suns, the Phyrexians manifested into 5 factions, each led by a different praetor. Each harvested mycosynth, to reshape Mirrodin to fit their vision of perfection, making an internal sphere of their own. Finally, they enclosed the plane's original surface with a new sphere and decorated it with massive, unsettling monuments honoring their victory. So he corrupts the plane again. He leaves out the oil. Memnarch, who was kind of his steward, ends up getting infected, and the whole plane ends up getting infected. We did a whole episode on this, and there was like a whole arc that involved Elspeth, where they're tackling this. Maybe Venser was involved in the Elspeth episodes.
I just remember drawing Venser with a car battery and Karn's ass on his nipples, basically, and I was just like, I'm pretty sure.
There you go.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things I can remember, and I was just like, these two met at some point, and I don't think it was in this way.
I remember that art. I don't remember if it was Venser or not, but yeah, I do remember the art, and that did happen. I could be getting my wires crossed as well. Thinking he was with...
Better not get your wires crossed in that situation.
Yeah.
I mean, he's explicitly trying to shock his own nipples off Karn's car battery butt, so...
Yeah, if you get your wires crossed, then it won't shock. I guess it still shocks. Yeah. You don't have positive and negative nipples. I guess it works either way.
That you know of. You never know until you try, Jamie, okay? Honestly, just the alligator clip seems uncomfortable.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the worst part, frankly.
Yeah, so we've done an episode on New Phyrexia where we cover the Praetors. We cover, like, Memnarch being corrupted, and, like, Karn tried to return to like fix the situation and before it got out of hand, but Memnarch blocked him from the plane because Memnarch, in his like delusional like half Phyrexian state, thought Karn was already there. And so it's like the classic, like, you know, you're in the space station and you're looking at your buddy Ricardo, and then you hear a knock at the door and it's Ricardo outside the space station saying like, let me in. You're just like, what's going on here?
Is that a classic space station scenario? What?
There's a quote from some NASA astronaut who, like, after getting back from the ISS, some interviewer was like, hey, so like what, like do you have any like interesting stories? And he basically tells like that as a story.
Oh, he had gone crazy briefly. He had space madness or whatever.
No, not like a real story, but like he was like messing with the reporter and was like
brilliant.
Yeah. So in that past episode, we covered the praetors and their factions. Go back and listen to it if you guys are really well. We won't drill down on them. I will like briefly introduce them, I guess, on this episode, as well as mainly we're going to be looking at their spheres because they didn't necessarily have the developed spheres by the last time we talked about them. I believe there was 5 spheres when we last talked about Mirrodin, New Phyrexia, and now there is 9. Okay. It's a plane alive in many ways, described as 9 spheres, each nested within the other. So I'm going to send you guys a Phyrexian Atlas. The art is by Illustranesia, and it's just called Phyrexian Atlas. But this is like a artist depiction, I guess, of the 9 spheres. If you guys want to try and describe it
as a 9 circle picture, it does look kind of like retro Bible art, so it's on point. Looks really.
You ever blow a bubble really big and then blow another little bubble inside it, and then blow another little bubble inside it? It's like that, but 9 times. Just looking at it reminds me of like I'm reading Asimov Foundations right now, and they describe this like mechanical planet that they have, and like most people are uncomfortable seeing the sun and the sky because they live within these layers of a city, and it really reminds me of that. It looks like there's colors to the layers too, like blue, red, green, blue.
Yeah. So green, the different praetors. So you guys will all see in the sky. There's 5 suns, 1 for each color, right? Yeah. And as I said before, like the praetors, since they were kind of created under these suns, they are each aspected to a color, and they have each claimed a layer. So there's 9. So 5 of the layers are explicitly run by praetors, and then 4 of them are just kind of like bonus layers, essentially. I find it really looks like something from like Greek, like it looks like Greek inspired, where it's like the layers of Tartarus or whatever, Hades, kind of different layers of hell or something like that is what makes me think of. So we're going to start at the top, and we're going to go down. You guys can keep using that as a reference picture for where we are in the progress, but I also have a reference picture for each layer. So the first layer is the monumental facade. It's the outermost layer of New Phyrexia. It is a monument to the Phyrexians' hubris in a lot of ways, built by them to show off their unified power as a giant sphere enclosing the entire plane. It is decorated with eldritch monuments, which seem to appear and disappear as at random. Now, the picture I've shared is Monument to Perfection by Igor Kiriluk. If you guys want to take a crack at describing that one.
It's fucking crazy. So there is the Polish artist whose name I always forget. It looks kind of like that. He does a lot of like very kind of bony, kind of Geiger-inspired hellscapes of like churches made of like human bones and skin and whatnot. Like the kind of the distant map in Scorn, if you guys played that. It is a humanoid shape, kind of in the shape, I guess, like a sarcophagus, because it's just like the broad silhouette of a person, like shoulder and legs, right? Mm-hmm. But it's got like a keyhole instead of a face, and I don't know how many fucking arms there are.
9.
Yeah.
8 visible, presumably 9, one behind that.
We would say 9, yeah.
And then it's just like got these hovering orbs that all look like balls of yarn, but if they were made of like candle wax or like skin, I guess.
Yep.
And then just like this like infinite plane of just white land with these creepy like rectangular pillars as well, and then like a sandstorm in the background. It's fucking crazy.
Yep.
There's 2 suns or moons too. I'm not sure.
Well, it's 2 of the 5, right?
Presumably some of the suns. Yeah. No, there's never any talk of moons on Mirrodin. Just suns.
I guess if you had 5 suns, you'd never have the chance to see a moon.
Yeah. They're not like positive and negative nipples. They don't cancel each other out, Jamie.
Well, you never. Oh, I guess you sometimes see the sun and the moon at the same time. Never mind.
See that. I mean, it happens a lot here, right? There's always a little day moon, right?
The moon's pretty cool because you sometimes see the moon during the day, but you never see the sun at night. Gotta admit.
Simulation slipping.
I remember as a kid being so excited during the day. I was like burning leaves with a magnifying glass. I was like, imagine doing this at night. It would be so cool because like the fire would look so much better. And then go like getting halfway through the day and be like, oh, you can't do that. You need the sun. Yeah.
It's kind of in the using a magnifying glass to burn stuff. The sun's kind of an integral piece of that puzzle.
Yeah.
So next up, we have the original outer layer. Nestled beneath the monumental facade is Mirex. Now no more than a devastated ruin, there are still those who have not succumbed to the Phyrexian plague. Though cut off from the mana of the suns, the Mirren survivors are not exactly thriving as they scrape an existence out for themselves. So there are still non-Phyrexians on the plane. The picture I sent is the Conduit of Worlds with art by Jokbas Wogintas?
Yeah, the fantasy words that you've been hitting us with are easier than the names of some of these European artists.
For our very Canadian tongue, essentially. But yeah, you guys. I mean, so this is the Conduit of Worlds. It kind of is got a bit of a Yggdrasil vibe to it, I'd say.
Yeah.
It feels, you can feel the ceiling on this world and the floor on, like you can tell you're not on the top one anymore.
Yeah, like, which I think is intentional because again, the monumental facade is kind of this like it is literally a monument that they built on top of the original outer layer of Mirex. So I do feel like they probably built the ceiling deliberately low, right, to like oppress the survivors and like take away that hope from them and be like, every time they look up, they see the underside of the monument, right.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's probably deliberate, but
yeah, it's like a tree growing upwards, but like it could almost be argued that the tree's growing downwards because it looks like it's rooting in both ways.
It looks like a root system, at the top.
Yeah.
Like a tree in Australia grows down, right?
Right, exactly.
It looks like there could be like a castle or 3 off in the distance, or I can't tell if that's just other rocks or something.
I think those are just like pillars of stone or maybe something else.
Yeah,
it could be ruins, absolutely, because this used to be a place where, and it is still kind of a place where people live, right?
Yeah, and very green and purple and blue.
I don't know, just because I'm an idiot. The little arrow thing that they use as an indicator as to who drew the art on the bottom left.
Yeah,
it looks kind of like a sex toy.
A little bit butt pluggy. I'll give you that.
A little bit.
Or it could be like a fountain pen tip.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
I thought it was a shoe with my bad eyes, but
Jamie seeing castles and shoes. Like this guy.
Oh my god, yeah. Jamie without glasses, like Mr. Magoo. It's just like goes to a sex shop, comes back with shoes somehow.
Yeah. Wearing dildos on his feet.
I got a shoe in my butt. They don't call it a clog for nothing.
God.
Oh man. That might be one of the best jokes we've ever told, honestly. Holy shit. That's got levels. So beneath Mirex is the autonomous furnace. I love this art because this is peak 80s fantasy art for me. This one and the Dross Pit, the black aligned ring, which we'll get to in a sec, are just like peak 80s art. This is the home and workplace of the Quiet Furnace, which is a faction under the command of the Praetor Urabrask. Now, in our last episode, you guys will kind of remember that the furnace layer is where humans primarily hid out to avoid Phyrexian compilation and being kind of conquered, because Urabrask seems to just like not give a fuck about humans more than any of the other praetors, essentially.
Okay.
So he's a heretic. He's the heretic praetor. He has a pretty loose command structure, meaning that the oldest Phyrexian sphere on the plane, often sees clashes between his underbosses. So he doesn't really care about humans. He doesn't really care about what his direct reports are doing. He's red aligned, so he's very much just like, everyone do what feels good whenever you fucking feel like it, and I don't care. This is the libertarian plane, I guess.
He's insane looking. Okay, yeah, he's the don't tread on me Phyrexian.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, shout out to the artist on this one for having the first pronounceable name of all of them, where we have Muhammad Firdaus. Thank God.
Yeah, exactly. This is the autonomous furnace art by Muhammad Firdaus.
There's like a lot of vertical lines in this one. Like there's a lava coming down. It looks like a furnace. Like it reminds me of Ironforge because that's what I play with, the big furnace. But
yeah, it's like it's all metal. And then like the background, you see these kind of like what looks like teeth kind of like descending down from the ceiling. But the metal is all like the classic like overlapping metal plates, I guess, to give it a very like smooth and rounded look, which is what just screams like 80s to me.
Yeah, it's very ribbed. It's, I guess, if you the thing that I'm thinking of right now, if you've seen Steppenwolf in the Justice League movies, the like very thin like ribs of metal is what he looks like there. Yeah. Which again, like the very 80s design.
So the Hunter Maze is below the autonomous furnace and represents the green aspected survival of the fittest sphere. Survival of the fittest sphere is a word. This is led by the Praetor Vorinclex, and so this art, more of those trees that look like they have root systems kind of at the top. This is the art is the Hunter Maze by Elena Danner. A lot of sun, yeah. Even though it's like, and we've probably talked about this. We probably talked about this the last time too. Like the concept of these spheres being nestled within each other is a lot like in Greek myth or like other mythoses, where it's like it's probably more symbolic than anything. Like when we talked about in the God of War, we talked about the Norse myth, how like Jormungandr is like another realm. It's like one of the 9 realms, but it's actually just like the wilderness kind of surrounding civilization, and kind of can be fluid and change depending on like which story is being told. And it seems like my interpretation of the spheres is similar, where it's like, yeah, they're like nestled within each other somehow. How you go between them is like not explicit, and like, you know,
this place looks like very like trees, like you said, sun coming down. It's like a really spiky forest floor. Yeah. It seems like the type of place where I wouldn't want to be. It seemed like you always have to look over your shoulder because something be hunting you in what's called the Hunter Maze.
It's the first one that looks barely livable though, because if we go up, we do have like the forge at the center of the world, the dying tree surrounded by gas clouds, and then just like Utah, it's just like salt basically forever. and this one at least has just like, I mean, maybe one of these like twisted trees bears fruit or something.
Yeah, doesn't look comfortable, but.
No. So we'll talk a bit about Vorinclex later. He's going to be one of the ones we kind of focus on in this episode, one of the Praetors.
He's very cool looking. I've been looking up the Praetors as you've been talking to them. He's neat. I want to.
Yeah, I think I said it before the episode started. I wanted to do it before the episode started. I'll share a picture of Vorinclex in a little bit, but his whole thing is he believes that this like Phyrexian idea of perfection will be achieved through like natural evolution. So he's like, when I said survival of the fittest, it's literally like he wants everything to run wild and kill everything else all the time, because like it'll just like wean out the weak ones, right?
Oh, okay, cool.
So you're right, Jamie. This would be not a good place to be. It's like an aggro forest. That's the vibe. That's the vibe check I find on the Hunter Maze. The surgical bay below is the home of none other than Jin Gataxius.
Yep.
Once a sea of pure quicksilver. Once the locals have been completed, the Praetor drained the sea to create a reservoir of Phyrexian oil. So there's just this like glistening oil all throughout this sphere. There was these Mirrodin research centers which were sunk down to the surgical bay, which, fun fact, something called the Fathom Wards contains the last known vials of Blinkmoth serum, which once filled Mirrodin's knowledge pool. Blinkmoth serum is just like a drug essentially, and the last of it is here. The last known.
I mean, we had to worry about mercury in our fish with our normal water. Imagine seas of quicksilver.
Oh, we got some fish in our mercury.
Exactly.
Stay safe, Ohio. All the mercury's washing up on the riverbank dead.
So the art for this one is The Surgical Bay by Sarah Finnegan. Also pretty 80s inspired, more sci-fi than fantasy, I'd say. Where it's like you get these like bulbous domes of what looks like quicksilver, and like there's kind of like these robotic eyes like everywhere, kind of like peering out at you.
Yeah, there's like the robotic sphere eyes are all hanging off kind of dopey looking springs, which is a neat kind of contrast between it looks like metal fire, like with like a pearl in it. Is what buildings look like. And then there's like these little like spheres with a bright blue eye in the middle on like little spring arms. Like I don't know if they would like. In my head, they would like watch you kind of like as you walk past, right? Like they would, that'd be a little.
There's a little door entrance on the left side. This is the first time I've seen somewhere where anyone could live.
Yeah, exactly.
Rent in the surgical bay is ridiculous, though. It's much safer in the conduit of worlds.
Yeah, my quicksilver pressure is awful in the shower too.
Don't flush the oil while I'm showering.
Yeah.
You're trying to flush a clog. You're just like freezing upstairs in the shower.
Next, we have a land of eternal conflict. We have the home of the 7 steel thanes, known as the Dross Pits. So again, one of the factions, the Black Line faction, currently headed by Sheoldred, the Whispering One, is called the 7 steel thanes. I have a quote for you guys from Grace Fong to kind of describe it a little bit. Thane Roxith began the project, naming his sphere the Flesh Layer. But Thane Sheoldred tricked him and claimed it for herself. Since then, the other remaining Thanes have moved in, established their own strongholds, and restarted their war games. They regularly send armed battalions against each other, but no one has deposed Sheoldred yet. So this is the other one that I said is very 80s fantasy looking.
Oh, yeah. This is straight up anything that has the Legion Burning Crusade for WoW. It's all like green liquid, like the Fel liquid or whatever. The structures almost look like they have ribs.
Yeah, it's like blackened flesh structures. Is the vibe.
Yeah, black and green.
The art is the Dross Pits, and it's by Martin de Diego Sadaba.
Sheoldred's very normal looking as far as some of these guys go, because she is just like the upper half of a lady with kind of like a horned helmet on, and admittedly her bottom half is just like a crab body with a huge mouth, but she looks much more normal than some of the more like chrome monsters that
or like Vorinclex, this like a bunch of bodies stuffed together with like bone and metal sticking out, and
yeah. She's very she's like if she rocked up, they'd put her in a movie because it would be easier to like CGI out the lower half of the actress's body, right? Instead of having like a full CG metal monster.
Well, it's funny. It's funny you say that, because in this first arc, at least, she gets the prime job placement, essentially, where she's going to go to Dominaria. She goes to if they're going to make a movie, it's going to focus on Dominaria, not Kaldheim, where Vorinclex goes,
Oh, okay.
So the last of the mana aspected spheres, and indicative of the Phyrexian hierarchy, the fair basilica rests beneath the Dross Pits. So while you guys take this picture in, I have another quote from Grace Fong. After declaring herself the dominant praetor of all of Phyrexia, Elesh Norn claimed the prime location for the machine orthodoxy. Her realm surrounds Mirrodin's mycosynth growths. Controlling a crucial material for building new spheres ensured Norn retained power over the other praetors. Every aspect of the Fair Basilica was designed as a symbolic testament to Norn, helping her consolidate her rule over all Phyrexians. So the art is the Fair Basilica. The artist is Mark Simonetti. You guys want to take a crack at describing this one?
It's the same colors as Atraxa.
Yeah, this is Machine Orthodoxy. This is Atraxa's vibe. All the white Phyrexians have this look to them.
I like her art and her theme a lot, because again, when we did New Phyrexia, I had to choose one of them to put in, and I chose her because she is just like basically what looks like she's a human woman, like very normal looking, except she's been like completely skinned. It's like all exposed muscle and blood, and like she like her modesty is like her chest and body and her face are covered in like what looks like porcelain or like this like ivory plates basically, and it's like the completely clean white and the bloody red is like such a cool contrast, and her building here looks, I don't know, it's like a fucking diamond with like horns on it, and it's all kind of like these little slots inside of it, and it's all red on the inside, and there's these weird green plants kind of around it as well.
Yeah, it kind of looks like cheese with like cranberry sauce in the middle.
And there's like spires out in the background that look like drill bits.
Yeah, those are asparagus. Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
Okay, yeah.
Cheese and asparagus.
The center of the planet, your pee smells funny all the time.
Yeah, Elesh Norn is great to draw. I mean, she is the girl boss Phyrexian, right? So,
she's got the skin and ivory pantsuit, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
If Hillary Clinton was in this, right?
Oh, I didn't save a picture of this next one for you guys, but I'll take one real quick. So
quickly planes walking to take a photo, and
so the penultimate layer of New Phyrexia is the Mycosynth Gardens, which I just mentioned. This was once the original core of Mirrodin. It is devoid of all life except for the strange fungal organism known as the Mycosynth, which has the ability to change metal into flesh and vice versa. I mentioned it earlier this episode. This is an integral resource in compilation and in transforming the plane, and like I just said, kind of transforming new spheres. This was once like where Memnarch lived, essentially, and him walking around seemed to trigger this mycosynth growth, which allowed the Phyrexians to kind of take over. This sphere is off limits to anyone who does not have the explicit blessing of Elesh Norn. So again, she put her sphere right outside of this one, like to control it and who could go.
And
in.
it's charging admission now, basically.
Yeah, you have to. Yeah, exactly. She gets like, everyone hooked on the mycosynth, and then she charges you to buy it.
There's like blue mesh everywhere, kind of in the same pattern of the trees from before, where it kind of roots to the ground and to the ceiling. And then there's these probing, like metal hands, like Doc Ock's hands, kind of thing.
Okay.
But they're going into the plane, and they're almost resting, waiting to trap something like those big ass squid at the bottom of the ocean. And,
you'll notice it is the asparagus from the Machine Orthodoxy picture as well.
Oh, okay.
Like those Doc Ock arms, and that's indicative of like her fair basilica has like access to the mycosynth just like that. You can almost just bend off the bridge and like pluck a mycosynth.
Snap off a good mycosynth spear.
Yeah, snap into a Slim Jim. Snap into a Slim Jim, and honestly, mycosynth might be healthier for your body than whatever the fuck goes into a Slim Jim.
To be fair, if it was just like a tentacle that turned my body into metal, I would rather do that than eat dollar store pepperoni.
I don't think Slim Jims are pepperoni. I think they're...
Is it not?
I think it's like fake pepperoni, where it's like pepperoni is like there's an explicit way to do it, and to label yourself as pepperoni, you have to do certain things. But I think Slim Jim is like the hot dog of pepperoni, where it's like shredded meat that's treated some way. But I don't know. I'm talking on my ass right now.
It's like jerky TM, right? Like it's salted meats that last forever. I don't know.
Like a corner store snack I liked as a kid was like the little pepperoni stick that comes in like a blue pack. It like peels off basically.
You had a pepperoni stick at my place one time, and you bought it at that depth that I'm sure it was like sitting there for 2 years before you bought it, and you took one bite out of it like before the podcast. You're like, no, I'm not going to eat this.
I don't remember that at all.
When I ate meat, I was a big fan of pepperoni sticks and jerky. Okay, so we've gotten past the jerky forest. The joiky forest, new jerky.
Yeah, New Jerky.
Mycosynth Gardens, also known as New Jerky.
I can't write titles down this fast, guys.
We've reached the end of our journey to the center of the Earth. We've arrived at the seed core. Now, I have a picture for this one. I'm not going to share it with you guys yet. We're going to talk about. I'll show you the picture a little bit later, because we're going to talk about what it is and how it's created, and it's gonna involve something called Realm Breaker, which I believe the picture shows, which does not exist in our story yet. So the Seed Core was once the home of Memnarch within the Mycosynth Gardens. He had this he had a house that he built, which he basically called the Panopticon. He lived...
Good.
He lived there. At some point after Memnarch's death, Elesh Norn came up with a plan for the Seed Core. This was also Karn's throne for a while when he kind of lived here as well. And Elesh Norn sees this like abandoned Panopticon with this throne to a planeswalker and comes up with an idea for it. The plan was born on an unfamiliar emotion for a Phyrexian, who are notoriously emotionless creatures, particularly the white aspected ones. Elesh Norn, for the first time in living memory, had a nightmare. With the unpleasant taste of fear still in her mouth, she turned to outside forces for help. So, around the same time, we have another classic MTG character who Jamie brought up, Tezzeret, who is looking for a way to contain the planar bridge he has lodged in his chest. And we've kind of talked about this before, that he has incorporated this piece of machinery into the center of his chest, but it is too powerful and it destroys organic material. So it's kind of like eroding some of his body. So he gets in touch with the Phyrexians, who, hey, if anybody knows how to contain a machine within my flesh, it's going to be them, right?
Yeah.
Elesh Norn strikes a deal with him. The Phyrexians would give him an indestructible dark steel body in exchange for his services and for some use of the planar bridge. So, reminders from our recent episodes, as well as the beginning of this episode, honestly, the Phyrexians are largely incapable of planar travel, hence them relying on the planar bridge. And the planar bridge is only capable of transporting inorganic material, meaning it was only the machine parts of a Phyrexian which could be transported. The rest would be destroyed. So Elesh Norn ordered her fellow Praetorians out into the multiverse. We know that Jin-Gitaxias ended up in Kamigawa. But in addition to that, Vorinclex, the green aspected Praetor, wound up on Kaldheim, and Sheoldred, the black aspected Praetor, wound up on Dominaria. Okay. So we're going to talk about Kaldheim on this episode. I would love to do the Dominaria arc in the future, so we're not going to talk about Sheoldred too much. What we do know, Jin Gitaxias, we know, used the technology of Kamigawa to develop technology to complicate planeswalkers using the reality chip that he found there. Kaldheim, where Vorinclex is going to go and where we're going to visit, is the Viking-inspired plane. So I didn't want to drill too much. I didn't want to drill too much on the lore and the story because we just did the God of War episodes. I feel like we've covered most of the interesting bits of Norse mythology. Yeah. While it does not have the technology of Kawa, it does have a little something called the World Tree, which if you listen to our God of War episode, you might know the World Tree is useful for accessing different planes or different realms, right?
Yeah. It's cool that he's in the Viking realm, because when I Googled it, Vorinclex looks like kind of a flayed bear, but has like bone shields on his shoulders and is just like a skull, which is pretty cool. I go a little bit of, it's like a bear kind of mixed with body horror a bit. I guess a reference would be like the bear from Annihilation. If you guys have watched the Natalie Portman movie, I think
Cocaine Bear.
Yeah, so Annihilation. In the movie, it's like the bear has like the skin is all flayed off its face, and one of the ladies that it kills is like fused to it, so it's also got a human skull on the side. It's very it's a great movie, which I think listeners, you should go watch. Actually,
should I watch Cocaine Bear?
You should watch Annihilation first, or else you won't understand Cocaine Bear.
Okay.
I mean, I read the Area X trilogy because Annihilation is the first in the trilogy. And I don't know how true the movies are, but I'd be surprised if you didn't leave it having some questions
and not understanding. Very bizarre.
Flavor. Yeah. I mean, it's very and like Jeff Vandermeer's other books too, like Born and stuff. It's very very surreal and trippy kind of storytelling, I find. As alternately, the last Praetor, or not the last Praetor that we're going to follow, because people paying close attention will notice that there's one that we're not talking about right now. But Dominaria, focal point for magic in the multiverse, has not only one of the densest concentrations of planewalkers who might oppose the Phyrexians, but it also has an ancient artifact known as the Silex, which
that sounds familiar.
Yeah, we should know that
before.
We should know that.
Go back to our very first episodes on the Brothers' War. The war between Urza and Mishra ends when the Silex blast essentially goes off like a magic nuke. Right. But we'll talk more about the different planes, specifically Kaldheim, after the break. Vorinclex rules the Vicious Swarm as its apex predator. Although he is relatively intelligent, he prefers making decisions with primal instinct and solves issues with brute strength and sharp fangs. So far, he has successfully maintained his dominance in the Grand Evolution by defeating any challengers and feeding on their bodies to strengthen himself. So that's another quote from Grace Fong about Vorinclex. I'll paste a picture of him for you guys. This is Green Sun's Twilight by Yong Hao Han, which I think is just a very, very cool picture of him. You guys want to describe it for the listeners at home?
Well, someone spent the $200 on the big Warhammer piece in the back.
Yeah. Exactly. Very Tyranid looking, I'll say.
Yeah. Pete, you can go for it.
Oh, yeah. I thought you were going to go with that one. Yeah, I mean, he looks less like a bear now. He kind of looks like he has more of like a dinosaur skull, but he still has the, I don't know, kind of like skin and bones forearms. I think, does he have 3 legs? Because the bottom half of him, he either looks like the tornado from the Hercules Disney movie, or is just like a 1 foot in the background. But yeah, just like spikes and bone. They kind of look kind of dry. This is a very specific reference because I used to live in northern Canada. Bones that are exposed to the elements for a long time live very flaky. He looks like he's been like out in the wild, and like kind of decaying slowly. Very kind of like dusty, flaky bone texture. And yeah, 2 big fucking arms and like a reptile skull. And then in front of him they look like Necrons. Not to just refer to some other thing. Like if you like try to describe this to the most normal person on the planet. And like there's a bunch of like tiny
little guys like him. Like
the scale is insane though. Like this guy's like on the horizon. Like he's the farthest away, and he's by and far like the biggest thing. Like there's even like pillars of stone nearby him, which he like makes look small.
Yeah, he seems to be on the monument plane because he's like you can see the suns here. So he seems to be on the plane of monuments, like with his followers. And yeah, he just stands like dozens, if not hundreds of feet tall.
There's another like giant rock structure that has like a line cut through it and a big hole, like kind of like a time-telling device almost, as if like the sun would pass through it, because there's like a circle in the middle and the two like kind of Stonehenge pillars on the sides there. Yeah,
looks like a Halo sword.
Yeah, it does actually. Yeah, it does look like the energy sword.
Yeah.
So Vorinclex, the Green Praetor, having the very simple base desires and being pretty explicitly against complex thought, was probably the easiest of the Praetors for Elishnorn to sway to her will. Right.
I like the fact that he is intelligent enough to think clearly, but his philosophy is like, no, what would a bear do?
He's returned to monkey.
He is. Yeah.
That's his philosophy. Good. Yeah, and he basically recognizes that Elishnorn is stronger than him, so he's like, well, she's the boss then, right? Like I can't kill her, so she's in charge.
Okay, so he's the Joe Rogan. He is the Joe Rogan of the Praetors, where he is just like, no, strong tribe win.
I guess, yeah. So Elishnorn's will right now, that he is swayed to, is that Vorinclex go to Kaldheim and begin compilation efforts of the plane and to just generally destabilize the region. Okay. So he's sent by Tezzeret. The planar bridge destroys all the organic parts of Vorinclex's body, which is problematic because he's probably the fleshiest of the Praetors. After the journey, he did not have enough strength to complete his task. Instead, his metal and bone was left rotting on the forest floor. He basically didn't have enough strength to even stand after crossing the planar bridge.
Now, if I recall, the Phyrexians can't really die, right? Because I know Jin Gitaxis gets like cut in the middle, like vertically during Neon Dynasty or whatever, and is just like back later, right? They can rebuild.
Yeah, they basically can just like take over flesh and like make it part of their bodies, which is what happens here. So he's a pile of bone and metal on the forest floor when eventually an unlucky stag comes across his body, sniffs it, and like that's enough organic material for him to kind of kickstart his evolutionary rebuild.
Cool.
So he just like it just touches him and he manages to like convert its flesh to his, and that now he spends like a lot of time just in the forest of Kaldheim as this like predator, just like killing other creatures and completing and creating more Phyrexians in the forest and just making himself stronger in the process.
Yeah, that's pretty dope.
Dr. Fauci said that we shouldn't let stags sniff us, and but he did, and now look what we're stuck with.
Yeah. So once Vorinclex was strong enough, he starts to make some trouble. So once he's like kind of strengthened himself up and absorbed enough other creatures,
when he's juiced on like 5 deer, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Once he's sniffed 5 other deers, he comes across the planeswalker Tybalt.
Dr. Fauci just sweating, just watching him smell deer, like no.
Just like a deer with a mask, like sniffing this like pile of bones and metal, and the pile of bones and metal, like, oh dang. So once he's strong enough, he meets this planeswalker Tybalt. We talked very briefly about Tybalt during the Innistrad episodes, where Sorin ends up leaving his home plane of Innistrad to chase Tybalt for a while, which leads to all these troubles and hijinks with like the angel that he creates, essentially because she doesn't have dad around to watch her.
Better be Tybalt, one of our patrons. Dad.
Yeah. Now this story, Tybalt was specifically the story of Tybalt was requested in the lore request channel. I'm sorry for not remembering who specifically requested it, but I probably won't do it for the reasons that I just mentioned, where it's Kaldheim and I'm less interested in doing the Norse lore right now, and I think I'd rather just move on to other things. But the Norse lore, I did read some of the stories we've been doing this episode, and like it is kind of told from the as though it was like a storyteller in Kaldheim telling the legends of these people, and Tybalt kind of seems to play a role of Loki in their mythos, where he's like this trickster who's going around and deceiving everybody because he's a planeswalker, so he's very powerful. He was set on this mission by Vorinclex to disrupt the plane because Vorinclex, quote, infected him with a seed, which again is a quote from like this storyteller telling this like folklore. So whatever that means, we don't know. It seems like he was infected with Phyrexia, but Vorinclex wouldn't know how to complete a planeswalker yet, so it's pretty unclear. Either way, he says like he infects Tybalt, promises him the antidote if Tybalt stirs him some trouble. Tybalt's like a little shit, so wanted to be stirring trouble up on the plane anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Just to rattle off some of Tybalt's accomplishments, he imprisons a god in magical chains. He starts a war between giants and trolls. He lies about the return of a demonic lord, causing a mild satanic panic. He's just generally doing a good job being a thorn in the side of order and just kind of going around like sowing dissent and distraction.
He just across poisons people with misinformation, basically.
Yeah, exactly. He just goes around and there's like some of those like Norse style murals like you see in God of War. Sorry to keep referencing God of War when we're talking about Norse mythology.
It was last week, yeah.
We just did the episode and I did a lot of research on it, but in God of War you get like the Jotun murals or whatever that have like the depictions. There's a lot of art in that style that shows him, and he is like a tiefling from D&D. He's got horns, he's a devilish looking figure. And like it shows him like depicted in those styles as kind of this like usurper or teller of lies.
Right. It's funny. That was the exact reference I wanted to use too. It's just like for those at home who can't see him, he's a D&D tiefling or very classic, like kind of twinky red devil businessman, like horns, goatee, very slim guy, popped collar.
He influenced a bunch of elections through targeted ads.
Yep.
He
classic Facebook guy, basically.
Yeah. He hangs out with Hillary Clinton at pizza places.
Yeah.
Devil.
Her pantsuit made of like ivory and human flesh.
Yeah, exactly.
You can walk through planes, but you can't get through the pizza gate.
Phyrexians can't cross the pizza gate. That's it. She doesn't allow organic material.
So Vorinclex uses this distraction that Tybalt has kind of stirred up to invade the realm of Essica, the god of the world tree in the Kaldheim mythos. Vorinclex mauls the goddess, and as she lays dying, she watches Vorinclex take a sample of world tree sap before he disappears back into a portal. So I have an excerpt from the story The Brothers' War Chapter 3 by Reinhard Suarez.
Great name. Holy fuck. Why isn't that guy a patron?
I know. I had the exact same thought when I Reinhard Suarez. I was like, damn, that's cool. Tezzeret remembered standing in Elishnorn's throne room in the fair basilica when she signaled him to open a portal to Kaldheim. The energy matrix of the planar bridge burst from his chest, bathing his body in a vortex of electric fire. Spilling out of the red portal was the scalding hot endoskeleton of Vorinclex, one claw scraping the floor and the other clutching a bottle, which one of Elishnorn's aspirants carried away. That bottle, it must have contained the essence of Kaldheim's world tree, and now the Phyrexians had their own. Realmbreaker. This was his doing. He was directly responsible. This is, during these stories, we kind of get Tezzeret realizing he might be in over his head dealing with these Phyrexians and dealing with Elishnorn so much. So this is Realmbreaker, that I referenced before. This drop of sap, which Vorinclex returned, was used to create it. And he created it at the Seed Core, the very, very center of New Phyrexia's power and former home of Memnarch and throne of Karn. The Realmbreaker is much like the World Tree of Norse myth, which connects the realms, though Realmbreaker has some extra oomph. And now I've posted a picture of you guys of the Seed Core with art by Kasia Kafis Zielinska.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy looking. So it's got the mechanical asparagus we were talking about earlier, but otherwise it is just like a star, like a ball of light, and it is completely, there's like just mechanical tentacles or roots, I guess, in this case, just twisted around the entire thing, and then there's whatever, like evil fog just spilling out of it on both ends.
The mechanical parts are like, this time, especially when you get closer to that core, it looks a lot more like veins or something like that. Like, it reminds me of like when have you seen when people like cough up like their entire like bronchial vein system of like,
I've seen somebody cough it up, but I've seen lungs before. I get what you're getting at. I've just never seen anybody cough.
Yeah, like the ridges, right, on your like trachea, like you can feel them in your neck.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, like, so it's like, wait, I don't even know if you guys want to see this.
I don't. I'm not a live leak kind of guy. I still eat meat,
no,
but I'm not much of a live leak guy.
It's like people cough up like the entire vein system, but like it looks like a blood clot of like all those like trees in their lungs. I have pictures of it here. It's not that bad, but anyways, I won't show you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you for not showing me.
It looks a lot like this picture we're looking at, though.
I can see the vibe that you're going for sure.
Yeah.
So I have an excerpt here, another quote. There's going to be the second half here is going to be a little quote heavy, guys. Apologize for that, but I have an excerpt from the Brothers War Chapter 1. So we're jumping back still by Reinhardt Suarez. If the Phyrexians had somehow replicated or repurposed Kaldheim's world tree, it could conceivably join every plane in the multiverse. With it in place, the Phyrexians could be anywhere at any time at the speed of thought. They didn't just have to worry about secret infiltrations like on Dominaria. The Phyrexians could march their armies in directly. So the world tree on Kaldheim connects the realms of Kaldheim. So Kaldheim is a plane, and much like Norse myth, it seems to have like the 9 realms, but all within that one plane. So the world tree allows travel between the realms, but not the planes. But the Phyrexians here at Karn's old seat of power seem to have developed a way to connect all the planes in the same way that the world tree did the realms.
Was Elspeth, the white-aligned planeswalker we covered, wasn't her realm eventually getting invaded by Phyrexians, or was that Nicol Bolas?
So
the order with all the angels, kind of Greek.
Elspeth came from the Phyrexian thing. She was like a prisoner there.
Yeah,
right?
not. It wasn't the plane of Phyrexia. It was an unnamed plane which was conquered by Phyrexians.
Yeah, she escaped.
Yeah, she when she was born, she was born in like the dystopian, like unplugged from the Matrix, essentially,
right,
future. Yeah. Where they were kind of like living in fear all the time, and her planeswalker spark eventually kicked off, and she just like traveled, and she ended up on, oh my god, the fractured plane.
The plane of order.
Well,
Alara.
She ended up on Alara, which was all the colors, but she ended up on the shard of Alara, which was like they'd all like fractured off, and then slowly they were merging, which was causing problems and wars and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay.
We have a whole arc on Elspeth.
Sorry, Jamie and I now are just like connecting the memories of the 40 Magic the Gathering. It's just like, it's all relevant.
Honestly, you guys get like bonus points because like Elspeth is probably the main protag of the story these days, and she's like the main person fighting against the Phyrexians, right? Because she has an immense distaste for them, and like where we last left her, she was just about to go to Theros, the Greek mythology one. I said I'd maybe do some episodes on her time there. I don't think we ever did. I did cover Theros, but not specifically her story there.
Yeah, the goat guy you covered.
Yeah, exactly.
We did Elspeth like 4 years ago at this point. I remember I was in Mexico for the end of those, which was August 2019.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why I wasn't on some of those. Yeah.
It was a long. Yeah, I think like part 3 or something you missed. It was the one where they go in the arena. Or no, that's someone else. That was.
So you're thinking of
Elspeth.
Yeah, Corona and that was I think when you were in Mexico. Yeah.
Okay.
Elspeth, it was more recent. I think not.
It was a part 3 of something. I remember that.
Yeah,
it was.
I am totally blanking on who turns into Corona, false god, but somebody.
Oh, thrice touched.
It was the guy's sister. The guy's sister turns into her, wasn't right?
Yeah.
The guy's sister, of course, as if that fucking helps anyone.
Yeah, exactly.
And we meet the guy who found the Mirari, and he shows up, and then there's
exactly.
What's his name? Johnny's in the crowd too. Maybe.
He was.
Yeah.
There's like a chroma. Yeah. Anyway, we did talk about whoever that was at some point, and the name will come
to remember things we've already done. Sorry.
As soon as we hit stop recording, the name will come to me. I swear.
Of course, naturally.
So while Vorinclex was busy in Kaldheim, you'll recall what I mentioned earlier. Sheoldred had been sent to Dominaria. She was sent to disrupt the plane, to gather as many artifacts as possible, and to sow discord. She arrives in the caves of Koilos, where once upon a time people of the Thran Empire had huddled for shelter, only to be overexposed to power stones and become sick with phthisis until a charismatic Yawgmoth showed up to promise them salvation and turn them into Phyrexians. We have this nice little like cyclical return to where we started. Much like her fellow praetors, the journey through the Blind Eternities took its toll, and Sheoldred was fortunate that someone who found her would be a member of the Society of Mishra, a secret cult of Phyrexian worshippers within the Tolarian Academy. I said it just before, the story of Sheoldred's time on Dominaria warrants its own telling. So I'm going to kind of save that story for potentially later. Not sure when, but we'll come back to that one. Cool. The clever listener may have realized that we are missing a praetor. Do you guys know which one? Come on, you can figure it out. Urabrask. So Urabrask, we haven't really talked about much during like this, like Elesh Norn's grand plans. Aligned.
I was trying to think of color, and I was just like,
The red one.
Like counting on my fingers, like blue, red, green, black, white. And I was like, oh, damn, what's the other magic card?
Black? No, you said black, white, red.
I can't even think of it now.
It's green that you're missing, but it is the red one that we're talking about. So I guess
I thought the grizzly bear guy was the fucking green one.
Yeah, he's green. Yeah, so it's red that we're missing. You just said the color red. I thought you were.
You
didn't say the color green.
So
Urabrask, aligned as he is with the color of emotion and freedom, red, was always at odds with Elishnorn, who was aligned with the colors of order and control, right? She's very much like...
this guy already. This guy's fucking insane looking, yeah.
Yeah, everything in its place, like, let's structure and all that. Whereas he is very much like, nah, fuck it all the time, like, whatever, you know?
He takes his clothes straight out of the dryer. He's wild.
Yeah, exactly. He never fell in line with the White Praetor's order, and it is indeed a rogue faction within the Phyrexians. During the initial invasion of Mirrodin, Urabrask did not actively destroy the native Mirrans, letting them hide in the furnace layer, because again, he didn't care. His distaste for all the other Praetors even led him to sealing off the furnace layer, because he just didn't want them interfering with like what he was doing, which inadvertently helped the Mirrans avoid complication while they were there, because they were like, oh, shit, this guy locked the door, you know, like,
honestly,
he doesn't seem to mind us being here.
Furnace layer kind of needs good ventilation. You wouldn't want to seal that off. It's gonna get pretty dang hot in there, right?
He's very. I said this about the spider lady whose name escapes me at the moment. The black one, Sheoldred. Yeah, I knew it was close to Shelob. Was the link I made in my head. Urabrask is super normal looking. He kind of just looks like a mechanical, kind of like he looks like kind of a crocodile with longer arms, just made of like chrome metal, and there's like fire inside of him. Like super not like if you look at Jin Gitaxis, who's like a twisted metal, like kind of in a shrimp shape sort of thing. He's a monster. Yeah. Then the other lady's like skinless people.
I'm not sure which picture you're looking at. This is like the classic Urabrask picture.
This is the one I was looking at. Yeah,
an old printing of him. I find he's very
Predator.
Not Predator, but Alien.
Like
the Xenomorph. Yeah, he was very Xenomorph. Like just metal plates instead of like the black chitin. Yeah.
So I haven't seen Predator or Alien. So thanks for fixing
what?
It.
You got it in two. You got it in two, dude. So.
Jamie just guessing what the Predator looks like.
Well, I mean, like, I know what it looks like, sort of, or I mean, I don't know which one's which, but I know what they kind of look like through just pop culture.
Predator has dreadlocks.
Yeah,
right,
and like the four little things.
I know what you're talking about now. Yeah.
So for the most part, Urabrask was ignored, except for Jin Gitaxias, who was paranoid about the sealing off of the autonomous furnace. But not too much really came out of it. Elishnorn never, I guess, explicitly up till now, has like made moves against him, and likewise. Once Norn, however, had secured herself as Goth Mommy Phyrexian Dami, Urabrask ends up syncing up with Tezzeret, and they both realize they weren't exactly comfortable with Elishnorn's level of clout these days. So again, I kind of mentioned Tezzeret's kind of realizing like he might be in a little bit over his head here, and he ends up meeting up with Urabrask, who's also like, yeah, I don't like her either. So maybe we can kind of work on something, you know?
Yeah.
So Tezzeret sends Urabrask to New Capenna, which is the gangster plane. It's like it's all like mafioso and like we've talked about it before, but like as the planes as storytelling devices are very monolithic in that they're like, this is the Japan cyberpunk, and like there's no other themes or motifs, right? In that plane, there's no like Western cyberpunk in the Kamigawa plane because it's Japan, and this is just like New Capenna is just the mafioso, like there's all these crime bosses and everything like that.
When you said gangster plane,
New Capenna because he's a legitimate businessman.
Exactly. You said gangster plane, I pictured this kind of stuff, you know?
Okay,
like
it's
SpongeBob.
SpongeBob SquarePants holding a wad of cash with a tiny little like pencil mustache curved up and just like a lot of diamonds and like a green suit with a green fedora.
Yeah, I had a shirt like that when I was in high school, and I always thought SpongeBob looked much better as a gangster. But
fair.
He's on the legitimate business plane now.
Yeah, right? He's on the legitimate business plane. While there, Urabrask meets with a planeswalker named Vivian Reed. Vivian is the last survivor of her own home plane. Do we? I don't think we've ever talked about Vivian.
No? Okay.
I don't think
Sounds like a familiar name.
Vivian
is a very normal name. You might just know a real woman named Vivian Reed.
Vivian is the last survivor of her home plane of Scala, a plane where advocates of progress and guardians of nature failed to find balance. So, like, her home plane just got ruined by capitalism, and she's the last survivor because she's a planeswalker. Now she travels the multiverse trying to find aid in that balance, which is what brings her to New Capenna. She realizes, though, that like New Capenna, it's like there's this like glorious city in the center, and then it's just like all desert wastes outside of it, and all the plants are like fake or whatever. So she's like, oh,
they're real New Jersey, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So she's disappointed in how little balance there is here, but she does meet Tezzeret, who takes her to meet an Urabrask severely wounded by the journey across the planar bridge.
Okay, is he in the back of like the butcher shop that Tony Soprano runs, where he's just hey, we got Vito brought out a new guy. He's got to come in here. It's just he's some kind of machine, basically.
Yeah. Just a pile of slag, essentially.
I found a picture of me with the SpongeBob shirt back in the day. Yeah.
Oh, playing bass too. Oh,
yeah.
Look at the fucking
like braces and all.
Curly ass little fro on the kid behind you.
That's Ryan McDuff.
Yeah. And Matt, and those were the days.
Those were the high school days. I got a quote for you guys from The Side of Freedom by Elise Kova, which kind of tells the story of New Capenna. Why would you be working against New Phyrexia? Vivian focused on Urabrask. She could understand why Tezzeret, an underling, a non-Phyrexian auxiliary, might work against Elesh Norn, but a Phyrexian praetor? Urabrask struggled to sit more upright, as if trying to gain some of the height and ferocity lost from whatever cruelty had been so clearly suffered. Just what had happened to wound a Phyrexian so badly? Elesh Norn has dominated all of New Phyrexia. Jin Gataxius, Vorinclex, and many of the Black Thanes have pledged themselves and their spheres to her grand vision. But I serve no one, and those I lead wish to be left alone. We do not share Norn's vision. Urabrask's claws rake softly against the stony ground in a movement that Vivian assumed was frustration. Norn wants the multiverse to be one singularity, for all life to be Phyrexian and all Phyrexians to be under Norn. We do not consider that progress. I will not give her the quiet furnace.
Ooh.
So Urabrask explains to Vivian that he is seeking to fight against Norn, to lead a coup, even if not to wrest control, but to simply deny the machine orthodoxy that same control. So he doesn't necessarily want to be in charge of the Phyrexians. He just doesn't want anyone to be in charge of him more than anything.
Oh yeah, so he is very much like the Ruby Ridge Phyrexian, right? Like that's what you're saying, like the libertarian living at the core of the earth, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So to do it, to fight against Norn, he tells Vivian that he needs two things from New Capenna specifically. It's why he's here. The first is a magical substance known as Halo.
Prosciutto.
Yeah. Gabagool.
Gabagool, yeah, Capricola.
So Halo is a substance made of extracted angelic essence, known primarily for its magic enhancing and curative qualities. A lesser known feature of it is that it is anathema to Phyrexians and would damage one just for holding a container of it.
Ethan, I can tell you took sides, by the way, because on the break you went and got a red sweater. So I know whose side you're on.
Yeah. Red and black. Plaid.
Oh, true. Yeah. Now I don't know what to think.
So Vivian agrees.
No Elesh Norn.
Yeah, exactly. Well, she's got a lot of red to her. Like her robes are red, and the machine orthodoxy is like red and white. That's their theme, right?
True.
Robes are red, violets are blue.
So Vivian agrees to get the halo for him, but as she's leaving, Urabrask stops her and asks for the second thing. So here's a small quote for you guys. One more thing, Urabrask said, stopping her in her tracks. While you hunt for Halo, there's someone else I need. Even if I had the strength to look for her, I can't move freely on this plane without suspicion. Who Urabrask asked for is better told through the lens of Elesh Norn, through the eyes and emotions of someone who has no emotions, and through the dream of somebody who does not dream.
I was hoping he'd be like, hang on a second. I need you to find me some Phyrexian pepperoni. I can't find it on my plane.
I need a Phyrexian Slim Jim. I'm going to return myself to strength.
Yes.
So I shared a picture of Elesh Norn for you guys. She looks a lot like she did last time, kind of how we've already described. A lot more red to her, I find, than a lot of the other white aspected ones, which are her red robes, which is kind of like robes of office.
Yeah, she
looks like the Spider-Man limited edition PS4.
I gotta give it to you. You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Gotta Google it.
So the story, A Garden of Flesh by Laura Gray, begins with Elesh Norn speaking. Here in the machine orthodoxy, there is perfection. Here, there is blessing. Clutched in her immutable Phyrexian hand is the head of a Mirran woman, struggling feebly against her. Despite this, though, the human stirred an uncanny recognition in Elesh Norn. Had she encountered this human before? Doubtful. She would have surely transformed the pitiful creature if she had. It was almost unheard of for anyone to escape the machine orthodoxy. Before her congregation, Elesh Norn punctured the flesh of the captive human, Phyrexian oil flowing into the wound. Soon, the organic imperfections of the Mirran would be replaced with cold and calculable machine.
Okay, so she can inject it because she doesn't have nails. It does look like, again, she's wearing like porcelain gloves, and the tips of her fingers, like from the point, not from the nail, are very thin needles. So does she? Yeah. Is that how she like transmogrifies people into?
Yeah, she essentially just like cuts this woman's wrist open and then like sticks her finger in, and from her flows glistening oil essentially. And again, she has access to the mycosynth, which produces this glistening oil. Okay. So she kind of always has it on hand, and it's kind of like the holy water of the Phyrexian church.
I don't know why, but that bothered me more than the bronchial blood clot.
Jamie's just like, hey, you guys want to see this picture of someone exhaling their lungs? And we're like, no. And now it's just like, oh yeah, she put goo in a man and he's a monster now. He's like, ugh, too much for me.
Put goo in a woman.
Excuse me, yeah.
And we'll see what happens to her. So I have a quote for you guys here. The Mirran's body heaved, a convulsion so violent Norn nearly dropped her, and a pulpy cord of organic material, a fibrous wooden root, sinuous and alien, burst from the human's belly. Blood, unnaturally thick and foul, oozed onto the dais. It pooled beneath Norn's feet, a twisted abomination of her own glistening oil, even as more roots bulged from the human's open mouth, wrenching teeth and tongue aside, breaking through her eye sockets and squirming into the air. Yeah. Elesh Norn was so perplexed, it took a moment for her to react. With a crackle and flare of white light, she transformed a piece of her porcelain armor into a narrow blade and sliced the Mirran's throat with a single stroke. Her lifeless body crumpled at Norn's feet, a pile of unnatural roots, blood, and offal. There was no signs of change or machinery. There was only unnatural corruption. This should never have happened.
Gross.
So I've been injecting people with mysterious machine fluid for years, and I've never seen this occur.
That's exactly like her sentiment right now, is like, this should have made her into machine perfection, and something clearly went wrong here. And she doesn't know what. She leaves the assembly. She's pretty perturbed. She does like a lot, like the story talks a lot about how she's like really trying to like maintain control in front of the congregation and all that. She orders the body.
Experiments go fine.
Yeah, exactly. No, it went good. It went good. No roots bulging out of people's eyes. Yeah, nobody's. What is the quote? No root bulged from a mouth, wrenching teeth and tongue aside. Why would you think that?
Oh, God.
I didn't ask, actually. That's a weirdly specific thing.
I have a small mouth. My teeth would definitely get wrenched, man.
Yeah.
I don't want that shit. Ow.
She orders the body dissected and disposed of. While she maintains an air of control, there is turmoil in her thoughts. As I said, Phyrexians don't feel emotions, though something was happening to her. She was feeling something for sure. Phyrexian oil was predictable, so why hadn't it been that time? The quote continues. Elesh Norn walked across the courtyard, the distant hum of Phyrexian prayers the only sound to accompany her measured footsteps. She ran one long finger over the lip of the dais. She thought to ascend the steps, to revisit the place the Mirran had collapsed and attempt to determine what might have caused the disruption, when she noticed a small blemish on the flagstones. Elesh Norn paused. There, where the Mirran's blood had run over the dais and onto the courtyard, was a small, inky weed, sprouting through a crack in the flagstones. Its stalk was twisted, a mottled jumble of greens and browns. It was fully organic, hideous, offensive. Elesh Norn reached down to pluck it, to rid the otherwise perfect stone of the weed, but it was slick, giving beneath her touch like the soft flesh of the Mirran's neck. Norn breathed and yanked the weed viciously upward. It broke loose, far larger than anticipated, the flagstone rupturing at the force of its dislodging. But no roots were hanging from the small intruder. Instead, a human forearm dangled, disproportionately large, half-rotten, bones swinging like the clapper of a cracked bell in the dislocated slop. Its limp fingers were splayed wide, as if still reaching toward the very soil she had plucked it from. So she's not having a good time.
This Monsanto carrots are out of control, man.
Right? Yeah. But our yield margins are up. Okay.
Yeah, I will sue any farmer if the wind blows a single human arm seed into a neighboring farm. I will sue the fuck out of them.
So Norn's kind of like looking around. She notices countless more weeds like this, and she starts like plucking them in the story. It's funny you mentioned the lung clot or the lung blood clot earlier, James. That I completely didn't remember this, but she pulls up one, and it just has like a human lung, like that she like plucks out of the ground essentially. There's ears. She pulls up like teeth, which are just kind of like intermingled with the roots.
Teeth is one of the things that makes me the most uncomfortable on the planet. I hate fucked up character design. For me is just like
too many teeth.
Put teeth on it, like Manus from Dark Souls kind of has
real
teeth
tumors,
on his, like,
dude.
Ghost hand. It is just like just awful.
Well, what would be one that would be kind of funny? What if she pulled one out and it was just like a really tiny little penis, like bling.
Yeah,
just like
little dick and balls.
Yeah. I'm imagining like regular like garden carrot leaves and then just like human limbs.
What about like a real thick donk? Like what about cheeks? You know what I mean?
That would be like a potato plant. There's like big ass growing up.
Like a succulent ass.
Like a peach tree, right?
Yeah.
So each of these weeds is an affront to her carefully planned sanctum. We are in like the Church of the Machine Orthodoxy here, the Fair Basilica.
And she's got an organ garden growing now in her like perfect.
Yeah, like perfectly ordered. No longer.
Right.
She exerts complete control. This should not be possible here. This isn't possible here.
Can I ask a question that might be a spoiler and might be completely wrong? Actually.
Okay.
I
might answer it with my next question, but go ahead.
Yeah, that's it. Is the Phyrexian fluid, which I cannot remember the name of, is it evolving on its own?
No, it's not. So Phyrexians don't feel. So all this stuff shouldn't be possible. This stuff is not possible in the Fair Basilica. Phyrexians don't feel emotion, and Phyrexians do not dream. But there is a planeswalker known as Ashiok, Nightmare Weaver, who thought to change that.
Oh.
So I mentioned earlier that Elesh Norn would have her first ever nightmare in living memory, and she kind of realizes in this moment that she is in a nightmare.
Oh,
which she doesn't dream, but like her cold, calculating nature is able to like put together like the only way that this is possible is if I was having a dream, and the only way I would be having a dream is if this guy Ashiok or this NB Ashiok is involved somehow.
Interesting.
So Norn summons Ashiok to the nightmare they had created for the Praetor of the Machine Orthodoxy. And I have a long quote for you guys here to kind of round us off.
Hey, motherfucker, you making me think about sex carrots when I go to sleep? Like, yeah, I was.
Really a long quote. I'm picking up my coffee. I'm putting the chair back. Let's get in, guys. Yeah.
So this abomination, this filth, is indeed your doing? Norn asked coolly. But of course, Ashiok smiled. To be completely honest, I was not certain Phyrexians would be suitable for my art. One simply cannot create a masterpiece without a proper canvas. So you were testing us, Norn said this with control, carefully calculated, even though her indignant fury had begun to boil. She refused to entertain the thought that the kernel of her lingering uncertainty might be perpetuating her doubt. Who else would have been a better test subject? You are the mother of machines, after all, are you not? Your mind... Ashiok's voice trailed away, contemplative and vaguely perplexed. It does not process fear the way that human minds do. We are a regent of Phyrexia, Norn said. We are perfection personified. We do not fear. Until today, she would never have questioned that statement. It would not have been a lie to say she had never doubted herself. But Norn refused to let that uncertainty surface completely. She forced authority into her voice, every ounce of deception and manipulation she had honed to defeat her rivals. She was not made entirely of organic material. She was not weak. She was not flesh. She was not human. Ashiok's smile only broadened. They glided in a broad circle around Norn, toes skimming the earth but not quite touching. Oh, if that were true, I wouldn't still be here, would I? Ashiok rose into the air slowly, and the smoke curling from the tips of their horns began to float downward, coiling around the human limbs and organs sprouting from the courtyard's flagstones. Norn's gaze followed the path of their ephemeral touch. There, in the jumble of broken stone, was a human head, growing through with a broad crack like a fungus. It was a female with dark hair and light skin. White armor grew up around her chin and jaw like fronds. Her features were covered in the mire, but beneath the filth, something about her countenance seemed strangely familiar to Norn. I first encountered her when I was creating my art in Theros, Ashiok said, each word somehow menacing in its softness as their smoke caressed the human's head's cheeks and brow. Her name is Elspeth Lore.
Oh.
So when Eilish Norn has a nightmare, she dreams of Elspeth.
Very cool. You didn't have a picture here for Ashiok. Ashiok is fucking cool. I imagined a human because of most of the planeswalkers, but it is just like the lower half of a face with horns, like black horns growing out of the cheekbones, and then most of the body is just smoke.
Yeah, he's they are a pretty ephemeral figure, known as the Nightmare Muse, like I said. But yeah, they the top half of their head seems to just be like.
Well, there isn't a head; it's just ears and cheekbones and a mouth, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like horns sticking up from like the top of the ears, essentially.
Yeah,
or like at the top of the cheekbones, and then there's just like this black mist. But Ashiok, being the Nightmare Weaver, presumably is only ever really seen in nightmares. So what their face might actually look like, who knows? And I like to think that the black smoke in the middle of their head is kind of like a nightmare, right? Like it's kind of the symbolic of a nightmare.
It's whatever your worst nightmare is. What's your worst nightmare, Pete?
Oh, damn. I don't know.
Too many teeths. He already said it.
Yeah, I was going to say teeth on the inside of your hands.
Oh, that's good. So yeah, he would just be smiling at you and he would have teeth.
Just
my worst nightmare is probably if anybody saw my pee-pee.
Fair enough.
Never let it happen.
Right, yeah. Oh, that's the one that was pulled up whenever we pulled it out of the.
It wasn't mine.
Yeah, Ethan's nightmare woman by Ashiok is just like going through his root garden, pulling up his own genitals.
It's hot mommy Phyrexian Dami Eilish Norn seeing my pee-pee.
Yeah. You guys ever have the dream that your pee-pee gets cut off and you have to race somewhere to get it sewn back on?
Nope.
I had that once. It was really scary.
Is that like a your teeth fall out dream? I've never had that.
Yeah. Like it got cut off, and I was just holding it in my hand. Like I gotta get to the doctor fast, and then there's like traffic. There's a guy with too many teeth for hands.
I've had the no clothes dream. I've had the dreams where my teeth are loose. Last night I had a dream where I ran into a teacher of mine, who I think lives in my neighborhood. I keep seeing someone I recognize around. And last night I had the dream where I finally like stopped this random woman and just be like, Dr. Shea, is that you? And that was the only thing of my fucking dream that I remember.
It's weighing on you, man. You got to talk to this person.
I do. I know. I need to stop her.
That's been our episode. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. We'd love to keep talking about dreams, I'm sure, but we are coming up on 2 hours here. I know this was a long one, so thanks for sticking through. I hope you guys have been enjoying the new arc, I'm going to say. I don't know if I'm going to jump right back into Phyrexia next, but if you guys have thoughts on which part of Dominaria United, the Brothers' War, that you guys want specifically covered, reach out and let me know, and I'll be happy to kind of work around that or try and integrate that as much as
if you want
find interesting.
A full hour recount of me getting my pee-pee cut off in my dream, let me know.
Yeah, that's going to be on next week's bonus content. So we'll get into the Patreon plug in a little bit. But before we get there, Jamie, do you have anything you want to plug?
No, just get into the Discord. That's where we're spending most of our time. Even throughout this episode, Pete posted a pic of us with all of our flannels because we got them over the break.
During the break, to be fair, I was not fucking off during work.
I took a picture of my dog listening to the podcast before you got to. There's a bunch of cool stuff going on. Honestly, like I get so hyped for some certain games in there too, like Hondolo and Fragile Shark been talking about Mountain Blade Bannerlord 2, or Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord. Sounds really, really fun. Also, thanks to Hondolo for helping out some folks in the Discord with their laptop issues. A big part of our community. I thanked you on the bonus content, but you'll never hear it, Hondolo.
Well, maybe someday.
Yeah.
Peter, is there anything happening in Instagram these days?
At Loreboys Podcast. If you want to reach out to us and DM us, maybe give us some free shit, random stranger, go for it. Otherwise, Comic World is going well.
I just got why they call it Squared Idea, because they have an idea and comic panels are little squares.
I don't know, man. Ask Chris. I have no fucking idea.
I just got that. I'm gonna say if they didn't mean it, that's Loreboys canon. That's where Squared Idea.
Yeah, I mean we can Loreboys canon all there. You can ask him at Comic Con or next time you see him. Otherwise, follow us on Instagram. Honestly, the Jormungandr Weatherman title card. Normally, I'll like post Transformers pictures to like bait people in, because there's always that classic artist thing of just like oh, here's a thing I spent 7 hours on, like 10 likes. It's like, here's a picture of Shrek, 200 likes.
Yeah.
Normally I use my Transformers collection as bait. The Jormungandr one, like, did really, really well. So if you want to check out the title cards and say hi, please at Loreboys Podcast on Instagram, or just go to loreboys.com where it's all posted anyway.
Cool. If you guys want to support the show, want to get access to that bonus content where Jamie will talk about getting his dick cut off some more.
It's not much more.
An hour? No, you promised him an hour, dude. You got to deliver now. You better go get dreaming. That's all I can say. We do have Patreon, patreon.com/loreboys. Become a patron. You get access to some special channels on the Discord server, including a patron AMA where we do our best to answer all your questions. You'll get bonus content. You'll get the script, which will have all the images from this week's episode conveniently already saved in there. You get to play a fun game called Loser Titles, usually on Mondays, whenever we can get our shit together.
It's a lot of fun.
It's before the episode, yeah.
That's patreon.com/theloreboys if you guys are at all interested in that. Thanks so much to everybody who's been leaving us reviews. They really, 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 really help the show. If you guys want to take some time and leave us some reviews on iTunes or Spotify or wherever, some 5-starers, it's super appreciated. So thanks so much. Anybody who wants to support the show doesn't trust friggin' Patreon, big Farmatreon.
The man?
Yeah, Patreon owned by Nestle and Monsanto.
Oh my fucking god!
You guys can, of course, subscribe to Lore Boys Prime, where we're building our church. We're building the Lorthodoxy, Church of Eastern Lorthodoxy, and we're taking all comers really. So we have some pretty basic tenets.
Bring your flannels.
One of which wear flannels. I mean, thou shalt not show Ethan's pee-pee. That's one of our primary tenets.
Yeah,
Pete, Pete, you came up with some tenets, right? You did. You came up with some tenets for our church, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't talk about my hairline ever. That's a big one.
He might have the best hairline out of the three of us too. Just saying something.
It's just because it's so dry. I can see my scalp when the light hits it. I'm worried.
You were just saying you didn't wash your hair for 2 weeks.
Yeah, I know. And now it's all dry. That's what I'm talking about.
No, it was months. Like I ran into Pete, and it was like a couple months he hadn't washed his hair.
Yeah, no shampoo.
I sniffed it. It was okay.
Yeah, 2.5 months.
Yeah, thou shalt sniff Pete's hair. That's another one.
That's our communion. Is everyone goes up and eats a little cracker, and then takes a whiff of Pete's hair.
No, it's just a wafer. It's just a wafer, but it's got one of my hairs on it. It's like the salmon spread with the little caper on top.
Yeah, and it's meant to symbolize the body and the pee-pee. The hair is the pee-pee.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you guys want to join the church, just send us a
bring your clogs.
I guess bring your clogs.
Get your put a clog in your ass.
leave your clogs at the door, okay? And don't during the congregation, do not go check on your clogs, okay? Don't be going to the atrium when church is in session. All right.
Well, it's like a mosque where you have to show up to the mosque wearing clogs and take them off and barefoot on the carpet, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And we all pray at the same time towards Jamie's apartment.
Yeah. I think that would constitute a Lore Boys.
Lore Boys.
Out.